Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing wonderfully well. Today I wanted to bring you a very exciting video, or it's exciting in my opinion anyway, because I am going to talk through my 10 before the end, my 10 books that I'm prioritizing reading before the end of 2024. So each of these have been assembled for a variety of reasons. One of them I've already started and kind of gave a soft DNF about a month and a half ago because it was putting me into a slump, and I cannot leave things unfinished. So that is one that I am desperate to finish before the end of the year. Others have been on TBRs for too long. Others are continuations of a series that I'm already in the middle of. And then some I'm just so excited to read. So let's get stuck in. The first book we have here is Minor Detail by Dania Shibley, and this book is particularly poignant and important. I actually picked it up in December last year and just haven't had the bandwidth or the headspace to be able to read something so serious and something so topical for a while. But right now I'm in a much better place mentally, and so I really want to take the time to read this because it is, like I say, especially poignant at the moment. So Minor Detail is written by a Palestinian author, and it is basically set 1 year after the Nakba, which is the original war between the Israelis and the Palestinians, and it led to the expulsion of more than 700,000 Palestinians from their home territory. This book basically begins 1 year later and then kind of jumps forward to many years later. There is a lady who is investigating various things to do with the Nakba, and she becomes particularly caught up in one singular death that happened at that time, and this book kind of, I guess, details that minor detail and this lady's journey investigating it. This book really came to prominence last year. It was actually quite difficult to get a hold of for a while because it had been, from what I understand, it had been nominated for an award, and then that award was then cancelled after the events of October 7th last year, and so the book community rallied round and bought a lot of copies of this. And I do feel bad that I haven't gotten around to reading it yet, so this is a priority for my 10 before the end. I'm intrigued to learn more about the Nakba. I'm intrigued to read from more Palestinian voices, and I'm humbled to have that opportunity. Next, I have Slow Days, Fast Company, The World, The Flesh, and LA by Eve Babbitt, and this is a novel that Eve wrote basically dedicated to one of the men that she just couldn't seem to get. She is known for being quite the seductress in the 60s and 70s in LA, but one man kind of eluded her, and this book is her, I guess, love letter to him in some ways. I'm excited to read this. I love reading accounts from the 60s and the 70s in LA. Didion in particular has been a wonderful source of inspiration for me in that respect, but I haven't read anything by Babbitt yet, and I did pick this up earlier on in the year, and I'm very, very excited to get stuck into it. I have picked a few kind of smaller books and some obviously larger ones, as you will see. These two definitely are two of the shorter reads that I've picked. I wanted to kind of give myself the opportunity to be able to get through 10, and so this is another Diddy one. I think it's only kind of 200 or so pages, 162 pages. So I'm very excited to read this. In a similar vein, I also have Graveyard Shift by ML Rio. So if you were subscribed to me last year, you'll know that I read If We Were Villains by ML Rio last summer, and it became one of my favourite books of the year, if not of all time. I think I probably think about that book on average at least once a week. So I was really excited when I heard that ML Rio was coming out with a new book. I didn't actually realise that it was just going to be a tiny little novella. I thought this was going to be a full-length novel. I am a little bit sad that it's only a novella, as I would have liked to have more, and I haven't even read it yet. But I do love ML Rio's writing. I know very little about this aside from it's something to do with ancient cemetery and an open grave and 5 night shift workers, but it's apparently written in her typical style. She is of course famous for her dark academia, and I'm excited to get stuck in. I did get this kind of a little bit damaged. I bought it at the airport the other day on the way back from a work trip, and yeah, I've somehow managed to get the cover a bit scrunched, which I'm a little sad about, but it's fine because it will be well loved and it will be part of my collection, and I do love a well-loved book, but you know. So that's it for the shorter books. I do have one which I guess would almost count amongst the shorter books, and that is In These Hallowed Halls, which is actually a dark academia anthology and includes another short story by M.L. Rio and also Olivia Blake, who features in this pile again too. I bought this last year because I wanted to read it in November, and then I don't even know what I did in November last year, honestly, reading wise, but I just got very distracted by other things. I think that was around the time that I began my reread of Throne of Glass and ACOTAR before Crescent City 3 was released in January, and I think that's why I actually didn't make much progress with my TBR towards the end of last year. So I'm trying to make up for it this year. I'm really excited to read this. It has some wonderful authors included. I do love dark academia, and I'm quite excited to read a mixture of short stories. I think this is one that I'll pick up and put down during the next kind of month and a bit and just read one short story at a time as like a palate cleanser between other reads. But I'm very excited for this one in particular. I'm mostly excited for M.L. Rio's book, I'm not gonna lie. But yeah, I'm stoked. Then I have the third book in the Oracles of Ouranos, I think that's what it's called, series. This one is Fate of the Sun King by Nisha J. Tully. If you follow me on TikTok, you'll know that I've been making my way through this series over the last couple of months. I read Trials of the Sun Queen in September and I really loved it. And then I read the second book, which I can't remember the name of off the top of my head, last month, and I enjoyed that too. Not quite as much as the first one, but I did still like it. So this one I'm looking forward to getting stuck into. Each of the books has ended on quite a good cliffhanger, so it's really making me stay invested in the series. But this is basically a Fae kind of fantasy romantasy series. We've got courts, we've got inter-court related politics, we've got like a bit of a shadow daddy situation going on, and it's really compelling. I'm really enjoying it. The writing's very fast-paced. It's not the best writing in the world, but it's definitely very good in terms of it keeps you hooked, keeps you invested. There's only 4 books in the series, and I believe it is a completed series as well. So this one I'm really looking forward to. I want to get stuck in. I'm trying to like rein myself in, but I'm really excited for this. Then we have one which has been on, honestly, so many TBRs at this point that you guys are probably all going to collectively sigh. And I totally get it, and that's why it's on this 10 before the end, because I simply cannot carry into 2025 having not read this book. But it's Alone with You in the Ether by Olivia Blake. This book has not only been in many TBRs this year, it made it across the Atlantic with me last year as a priority read for when I moved, and I still didn't read it. It was on so many TBRs last year and also the year before, which is absolutely ridiculous. But I have the gorgeous Waterstones exclusive edition with the beautiful sprayed edges. Just smack myself in the face with it. I love the aesthetic of this book. I'm really intrigued by this book. This is a contemporary love story like no other. They explore the nature of love, what it means to be unwell, and how to face the fractures of ourselves and still love as if we are not broken, which sounds incredible. I absolutely love Olivia Blake. I think I've read pretty much everything she's ever written now, aside from Masters of Death, which I also have on my TBR pile, which nearly made it onto this pile, but I went for this one instead. And also the third Atlas 6 book I haven't read yet because I got it delivered at my parents' house in the UK. Because I've got all of the Waterstones exclusive editions of that trilogy so far. I wanted them all to match, and so I ordered the last one, and obviously it came out earlier on this year, and I've not been home this year, so I haven't been able to read it yet, and I am so excited to read that in December. So that's a bit of a spoiler alert for my December reading plans. I'm so excited to read that over Christmas. But yeah, I can't wait for this. I love Olivia Blake. Her writing is sensational and she is one of my favourites. So I am looking forward to delving in. Fae Bound by Sarah El Arifi. This one I've heard mixed things about. I've heard some people absolutely love it and some people really did not gel with it. From what I understand, it's a Fae fantasy romance with a bit of spice. And that's all I really needed to know, honestly, upon picking it up. I know absolutely nothing about the plot, but I do know that Jan Agaton really liked this book, and I do trust Jan's opinions on books. We do have a fairly similar taste, I think. So I am really excited to see what this is. It says it's an epic romance brimming with heart, devastatingly romantic and breathtakingly fantasy. I didn't read that right, but you knew what I was going with there. The most imaginative take on a steamy fairy court I read in forever, with a cascade of epic twists that will leave readers gasping. So I'm ready to gasp some gasps when I read this. I'm looking forward to this. This will be a nice palate cleanser as well amongst some of like the heavier books that I've got, because we're getting into heavier now. We first of all have The Will of the Many by James Islington. This has also been on a few TBRs this year, but I've been put off because honestly, it's very long and the typeface is very small, and I'm concerned that this is going to send me into a slump. I've heard it's incredible, and I do think I will enjoy it, but I think it'll be one of those where, because it's so long, I'm going to feel like I'm taking forever to read it, and therefore maybe may end up feeling a little bit slumpy. But I am excited to read it. So from what I understand, this is kind of a dark academia fantasy with elements of the Roman Empire thrown in, as you can probably tell from the columns on the front. And I believe that will is kind of the currency, I think. Am I right in thinking that? Yes, it seems that way. I'm very curious about this. Again, like, I don't really know a lot about the plot, and I've kind of kept it that way on purpose because I don't want to get spoiled for this, because I am really excited. I saw a lot of people talking about it on TikTok earlier in the year and saying that this should be the new dark academia kind of hyped book, and I know it has got some hype, but I don't think it took off quite as much as everybody was expecting it to. But I am excited to read it. I'm just kind of very intimidated by it. I actually have a friend who's reading it at the moment. She says it's great, so I do trust her opinion, and I think that I will enjoy it. I'm just nervous about it. Then we do have a book that has put me into a slump, and that's Butter by Asako Yuzuki. This is a translated work of fiction. It follows the story of an investigative journalist who is looking into a female serial killer who is imprisoned for supposedly killing her romantic partners, her male romantic partners. And it's interesting. There's a lot of very good commentary on misogyny and kind of the expectations of women in a patriarchal society. There's a lot of focus on body image and the sexualization of women. It's a very good book. It's very hard hitting, but I kind of got to this midsection and it just lost me. It's not that it's boring, it's just that there's not a huge amount happening right now, and I felt myself really struggling to muster up the enthusiasm to pick this up and read. That there was a lot of other things on my shelves that I was feeling more called to read. But like I say, I cannot finish a year with a book unread, like half unread. That's just not something that can happen. And so I do need to finish this to make myself feel like I can close the year out, you know? So I will get through it. I have heard it does pick up again in the end. I really hope it does, because it has lost me right now, and it's making me sad because so many people seem to enjoy it this summer, and I was really excited to pick it up, and then now I'm like, oh, great, I have to read Butter again. Wonderful. And then finally we have Memoir. This year has been the year of the memoir for me. I've really, really enjoyed kind of delving more into memoirs. And some of my favourite books so far this year have been memoirs. I have a load more on my TBR pile that I really want to get to as well. And it was a toss-up between all of them as to which one I was going to pick up first. But I think Men Have Called Her Crazy by Anna Marie Tendler has to be the one that I reach for next. So I've just read the blurb a little bit because I couldn't remember exactly how this is framed. I have a couple of different memoirs around the topic of women who have been receiving psychiatric care in a facility. And so they're all kind of, in my head, like bled into one. But this says, the stunning literary self-portrait examines the unreasonable expectations and pressures women face in the 21st century. Yet as overwhelming and despairing as that can feel, Tendler ultimately offers a message of hope. So she checked herself into a psychiatric hospital in 2021, and this book effectively talks about her experiences within that psychiatric hospital, but also how a lot of those experiences kind of are all routed in experiences that she had with men. So yeah, I'm sure we can all relate to some degree to that. So yeah, I'm stoked to get stuck into these. I'm sure I will also get distracted and read a ton of things that aren't on that list, and probably will not necessarily make my way through this entire list, but these are my 10 hopefuls, my 10 before the end, that I really do hope I get to, amongst other things. I feel, as you can tell, probably very out of practice with filming. It has been quite some time since I've sat down and spoken to a camera at length, and it has definitely been quite some time since I've looked at or spoken about books in a critical fashion or analytical fashion. So I'm not used to sounding intellectual or trying to come up with thought-provoking conversation points when it comes to what I'm reading, but I will get back into it. Please do bear with me as the next couple of weeks pan out and I get back into the routine of filming and editing and everything else. But I'm excited to be back. I'm excited to be reading. I'm excited to get stuck into all those wonderful books. I'm excited for the reading to come in 2025. And if you've made it to the end of this video, thank you so much. If you're new here, please do not forget to hit that subscribe button. If you are a returning subscriber, thank you again so much for sticking with me during my period of inactivity. And I will see you in another video very soon.